The silence in the Galactic Council chambers was deafening. 3 years of careful observation, 3 years of detailed analysis, and they had gotten it completely wrong.
Holographic
Displays flickered with what they believed was certainty Earths. Dominant species were peaceful herbivores. Perfect candidates for manual labor in their expanding empire, Admiral Vex materialized his translucent form above the lush Amazon rainforest. His alien features twisted into what passed for satisfaction. Among his kind, below, humans moved through cultivated fields with methodical precision, harvesting crops under the warm sun. Look at them, he transmitted to his fleet commanders, primitive gatherers who've barely discovered agriculture. They'll make excellent workers in our lithium mines on Kepler 44b. But here's the thing about assumptions. They can kill you faster than any weapon ever invented. 6,000 miles away. Buried beneath 200 feet of reinforced concrete and steel in the Colorado Rockies. General Jack Reynolds sat in America's most classified facility. His weathered face, carved by 30 years of military service, remained stoic as streams of intercepted alien communications flowed across multiple screens. The man who'd earned his stars in Iraq and Afghanistan now faced humanity's greatest challenge. "Sir, they're calling us docile food gatherers again," reported Tech Sergeant Williams, barely suppressing a chuckle. "Should we be insulted?" Reynolds allowed himself the ghost of a smile. "Let them keep thinking that, Sergeant. Every predator knows the value of camouflage." He turned to address his team of hand-picked specialists. "Gentlemen, ladies, what you're witnessing is the greatest intelligence failure in galactic history. They've been watching our farmers, our aid workers, our teachers. They have no idea what Americans are truly capable of when threatened." The irony was almost poetic. While alien sensors focused on peaceful human activities, they'd completely missed the military-industrial complex that had shaped the modern world. They didn't see the nuclear submarines patrolling beneath polar ice caps. They couldn't detect the stealth aircraft that moved like ghosts through their own sensor networks. Most importantly, they failed to recognize the predatory intelligence that had conquered an entire planet. Captain Lisa Morgan, a former Navy SEAL, turned head of the newly formed Xenological Defense Initiative, stepped forward with the fluid grace of a trained killer. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, but her green eyes held the intensity of someone who'd seen combat in 3 different theaters. "Sir, satellite intelligence confirms their positioning for first contact. Geneva, exactly as our behavioral models predicted." "Of course it's Geneva," Reynolds mused, his voice carrying the weight of someone who understood human psychology better than the aliens studying it. "They want to approach what they perceive as our most peaceful, diplomatic representatives. They have no idea they're about to meet wolves disguised as sheep." The massive screens displayed real-time footage of alien vessels entering Earth's atmosphere. To the untrained eye, it looked like a peaceful delegation sleek. Elegant ships descending gracefully toward the Swiss Alps. But Reynolds saw it differently. He saw an invasion force that had made the fatal mistake of underestimating their. "Pray, ma'am," interrupted Lieutenant Colonel Davis from the communications station. "We're receiving reports from our assets in Geneva. The Swiss are playing their part perfectly, all smiles and diplomatic courtesy. The aliens are eating it up." But wait, here's where it gets interesting. While the aliens congratulated themselves on finding such compliant subjects, every major military power on Earth had been quietly mobilizing for months. The Pentagon had activated contingency plans that most Congress members didn't even know existed. NORAD had shifted from monitoring terrestrial threats to tracking extraterrestrial ones. And in the deepest bunkers of America's military infrastructure, weapon systems that officially didn't exist were coming online. "Status report," Reynolds commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to life-or-death decisions. "All domestic assets are in position," Morgan replied, consulting her tablet. "The Pacific Fleet has repositioned under the cover of routine exercises. Our European allies are maintaining normal operations while discreetly preparing for deployment. The aliens' own surveillance shows nothing unusual, just regular military activities of a peaceful species." The general's smile widened slightly. "And that, Captain, is why they're about to learn a very expensive lesson about the difference between peaceful and harmless. The countdown had begun, though the aliens didn't know it yet. In boardrooms across America, defense contractors were finalizing weapons systems that would make science fiction look like a children's toy box. In military academies, the brightest tactical minds were wargaming scenarios that would have been impossible just months earlier. And in the halls of Congress, politicians who usually couldn't agree on lunch were united in their determination to protect American interests. What the Galactic Council had failed to understand was that humans, particularly Americans, had spent centuries perfecting the art of warfare. They'd turned conflict into a science, strategy into an art form, and victory into a cultural expectation. The same species that had ended to world wars, put men on the moon, and created the internet, was now being underestimated by beings who thought agriculture was humanity's greatest achievement. The alien shuttle touched down in Geneva at precisely 14:30 local time. As the delegation emerged, they were greeted by smiling diplomats, peaceful protesters holding welcome signs. In what appeared to be a curious but harmless gathering of Earth's inhabitants, the aliens activated their recording devices, already preparing the report that would recommend Earth. For immediate colonization, they had no idea they were being watched by predators who had been planning their response for years. "Gentlemen," Reynolds announced to his team, "it's time to show our guests what American hospitality really looks like." The trap was set. The prey had arrived. And Earth's apex predators were about to reveal their true nature, the sound that shattered the silence aboard. The hegemony mothership wasn't just an alarm, it was the death knell of galactic civilization. As they knew it, red warning lights bathed the command center in an ominous glow, while emergency klaxons wailed with the urgency of a species that had just realized they'd made a catastrophic mistake. Admiral Vex's tentacles trembled as he stared at the bioscanner readouts, his three eyes struggling to process data that shouldn't exist. The genetic analysis had taken 72 hours to complete, and the results were terrifying. Humans weren't the docile herbivores they'd observed. They were apex predators disguised as farmers. "Omnivorous hunters," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the chaos. "Pack coordination abilities that exceed our own military protocols. Territorial aggression patterns that rival the extinct void stalkers of the Andromeda sector." General Korth's massive exoskeleton clicked and word as he leaned over the display, his compound eyes reflecting the horror of the revelation. How is this possible? Our surveillance teams watched them for 3 rotations. They grow crops, tend livestock, build peaceful settlements. But here's what they didn't understand about humans, and Americans in particular were really good at multitasking. They masked their true nature, Vex replied, his voice cracking under the weight of implications. "Look at their social structure. Most galactic species have a single alpha, a clear hierarchy, but humans," he gestured at the tactical display showing Earth's military organization, "they have multiple competing alpha predators who somehow coordinate. During external threats, it's not just unnatural, it's unprecedented." The main display flickered to life, showing real-time satellite footage of American military installations. What the aliens witnessed next would haunt their species for generations. Across an entire continent, military bases that had appeared dormant suddenly erupted into coordinated activity. It was like watching a sleeping giant awaken, and that giant was very, very angry. "Mountain Home Air Force Base, Nevada F2, 2 Raptors launching in formation," reported the ship's tactical officer, his voice tight with fear. "Norfolk Naval Base, Virginia submarines, departing at maximum stealth configuration. Fort Bragg, North Carolina's special operations units mobilizing for immediate deployment." The aliens watched in stunned silence as America's military machine revealed itself. These weren't the primitive warriors they'd expected to find on a pre-contact world. These were sophisticated predators with technology that shouldn't exist. For a species that had barely achieved interstellar communication, Colonel Mike Thompson's voice crackled through intercepted communications from Peterson Air Force Base. "All units, condition red. We have uninvited guests who apparently didn't RSVP. Time to show them some good, old-fashioned American hospitality. Wait, did a pre-contact species just make a joke about interstellar warfare?" The aliens were beginning to realize they'd severely underestimated not just human capabilities, but human psychology. The horror deepened as stealth aircraft began appearing on their sensors, or rather not appearing. Ghost signatures that flickered in and out of existence, defying everything they knew about atmospheric flight. The humans had somehow developed technology that made their craft nearly invisible. 2 sensors that could detect a pebble from 3 star systems away. "Sir," stammered a junior officer, "we're detecting submarine launches from positions that were supposed to be empty ocean. How are they hiding entire fleets from our deep space scanners?" Admiral Vex didn't answer. He couldn't answer. The tactical display showed submarines emerging from beneath polar ice caps, from underwater caverns, from positions that had shown zero activity during their surveillance. It was as if the humans had built an entire shadow military that existed in parallel to their visible society. But the most chilling revelation was yet to come. "Admiral," reported the communications officer, his voice barely controlled, "we're intercepting internal human communications. They're not just organizing for defense. They single quotes, re ... He paused, struggling to find the words. "What?" they're excited about. This. The bridge fell silent except for the steady hum of life support systems. Excited? What kind of species gets excited about first contact with a superior galactic civilization? The answer was playing out in real time across their monitors. In Pentagon briefing rooms, generals were grinning as they discussed deployment strategies. In aircraft carrier ready rooms, pilots were high-fiving as they received combat orders. In submarine control rooms, crews were displaying enthusiasm that bordered on predatory anticipation. "Look at this," General Korth said, his voice hollow. With disbelief, he'd isolated an audio feed from the USS Carl Vinson. "They're calling it the ultimate training exercise. They're treating an alien invasion as ... entertainment." The psychological profile was becoming clear, and it was terrifying. Humans didn't just have the capability for warfare, they had an appetite for it. They'd spent centuries fighting each other, refining their skills, perfecting their technology. Now they had a new opponent. They were approaching it with the enthusiasm of athletes who'd finally found worthy competition. "Sir," reported the intelligence officer, "we're detecting massive energy signatures from installations that didn't exist in our previous scans, out underground facilities, hardened bunkers, weapon systems that appear to be specifically designed for..." He stopped, realizing the implications. "For what?" demanded Vex. "For us, sir. These weapons are designed to counter our technology. They've been preparing for this encounter for years." The truth hit the alien command crew like a physical blow. While they'd been observing what they thought was a primitive species, that species had been observing them right back. Every scanning beam, every surveillance drone, every reconnaissance mission had been detected, analyzed, countered by minds that treated warfare as both science and art. "They know," whispered Admiral Vex, his form shimmering with fear. "They've known we were watching them. This whole time they've been putting on a show." On the display, American military forces continued their impossible coordination. Aircraft carriers that had been conducting routine exercises were now revealed as strategic positioning. Military bases that appeared to be training facilities were actually forward operating positions. The entire continental United States had been transformed into a fortress, and they'd walked right into it. "Admiral," came a voice from the communications station, "we're receiving a transmission from the human forces. It's addressed to you personally." The message was simple. It's delivered in perfect galactic standard by a human who shouldn't have been able to speak their language. "Welcome to Earth. We've been expecting you." Admiral Vex stared at the tactical display, watching as humanity's true nature revealed itself like a predator dropping its camouflage. They hadn't discovered a species suitable for conquest. They'd awakened something that had been patiently waiting for them to make the first move. The hunt was about to begin, and for the first time in galactic history, the aliens were the prey. The galaxy had never experienced terror quite like this. 6 months after humanity's violent introduction to galactic civilization, entire star systems were going dark, not from war or conquest, but from something far more primal: fear. Trade routes that had operated safely for millennia were now abandoned. Alien cargo ships traveled in heavily armed convoys, their crews jumping at every sensor ghost. The reason for their panic had a name. It prowled the void with predatory efficiency. The USS Relentless. Captain Tom Bradley stood on the bridge of humanity's most feared warship, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of tactical displays. The former Marine had earned his stars in the Syrian conflict, but nothing had prepared him for hunting aliens across the cosmos. His ship cut through hyperspace with the fluid grace of a shark, its hull black as the void itself, bristling with weapons that had been theoretical just months earlier. "Sir, we're approaching the Vega sector," reported Navigation Officer Sarah Chen, fingers dancing across holographic controls. "Long-range sensors are detecting multiple contacts." Bradley nodded, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. The Vega sector had become a hunting ground for alien pirates, who'd made the catastrophic mistake of thinking humans were easy prey. 3 American cargo vessels had been attacked in the past week, their crews taken as slaves, their cargo stolen. The pirates had no idea they'd just signed their own death warrants. "Contact bearing to 70, announced Lieutenant Emma Davis from the tactical station, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. The young officer had graduated top of her class from Annapolis, but her real education had come in the months since first contact. Vessel configuration matches the slavers who hit the Philadelphia's Dream last Tuesday. Bradley's jaw tightened, like a steel trap. Philadelphia's Dream had been a civilian transport carrying families to the new colony on Kepler. 438B men, women and children, who'd committed no crime other than being human in a galaxy that had suddenly decided humans were valuable property. "Target acquired," Davis continued, her voice gaining an edge that would have terrified the aliens if they'd understood its meaning. "Slaver ship, and I'm reading human life signs aboard. Looks like they're still carrying our people. Hey, here's what the aliens didn't understand about Americans. We don't just rescue our people. Make sure the people who took them never get the chance to do it again." "That was their second mistake," Bradley said, his voice carrying the cold certainty of someone who'd made peace with violence long ago. "First was taking our people. Second was running from us when they should have been praying to whatever gods they believe in." The bridge crew exchanged glances that spoke volumes. These weren't just military personnel, they were Americans who'd grown up on stories of the Alamo, of Normandy, of ordinary people doing extraordinary things when their freedom was threatened. The aliens had awakened something in the human spirit that had been dormant since the last World War. Bradley keyed the ship-wide communication system, his voice echoing through every deck of the Relentless. "All hands, battle stations. This is not a drill. We have American citizens being held against their will by alien pirates who think they can steal our people and disappear into the void. Time to remind the galaxy why you don't mess with Americans." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Throughout the ship, sailors who'd been playing cards moments earlier were now manning weapons systems with practiced efficiency. In the engineering sections, technicians were pushing reactor output to levels that would have been impossible before human innovation met alien technology. The Relentless transformed from a ship into a weapon, and that weapon had a target: the alien. Vessel tried to flee, but human engineering had already surpassed their technology in ways that defied galactic understanding. While they'd been building ships for trade and exploration, humans had been perfecting the art of making things go fast and hit hard. The Relentless closed the distance with predatory grace, its engines producing a subspace signature that registered on alien sensors like the growl of an approaching apex predator. "They're trying to jump to hyperspace," reported Chief Engineer Rodriguez from the engine room. "Should I let them?" Bradley's smile was razor-sharp. "Negative. Cut off their escape route. I want them to understand what it feels like to be trapped." Relentless deployed gravitic mines that collapsed the local space-time fabric, making hyperspace jumps impossible. It was a tactic that had never been used in galactic warfare, because no species had ever been creative enough to weaponize the very fabric of reality itself. The alien ship found itself caught in a trap that shouldn't exist, deployed by beings who were supposedly primitive. "Sir," "They're hailing us," reported Communications Officer Ryan Martinez, his voice tight with anticipation. "Audio only, but I'm reading panic in their transmission patterns." "Put them through," Bradley ordered, settling into his command chair, like a judge preparing to deliver a verdict. The alien captain's voice filled the bridge, and even through the universal translator, his terror was unmistakable. "Please, we surrender. We'll return your people unharmed." Didn't know they were protected by the Terran Federation. The bridge fell silent, except for the steady hum of weapon systems charging to full power. Protected? These aliens still didn't understand what they were dealing with. This wasn't about protection, this was about consequences. Bradley's response was delivered in the flat, emotionless tone that every American soldier learns to recognize as the voice of inevitable justice. Surrender denied. "Do you want to hunt?" "Humans. Now you get to see what happens when humans hunt back." Wait, did he just refuse their surrender? The aliens were learning that humans didn't just fight differently, they thought differently. This wasn't about territory or resources. This was about sending a message that would echo across the galaxy, "Touch an American, and we'll hunt you to the ends of the universe." The battle lasted exactly 4 minutes and 37 seconds. The Relentless didn't just destroy the alien. Vesselit vaporized it with such overwhelming firepower that nearby sensor stations registered the explosion as a brief. Artificial star. The human prisoners were rescued by transporter beams seconds before the alien ship ceased to exist. "All prisoners recovered," reported the medical officer. "They're traumatized, but alive. They want to know who saved them." Bradley stood at the viewport watching the expanding debris field that had once been an alien warship. Tell them the United States Navy was happy to provide taxi service home. The message spread through the galactic underground faster than light-speed communication. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were hunting with a systematic efficiency that turned predators into prey. The USS Relentless had become a ghost story told in alien bars, a nightmare that hunted pirates across the void. Within weeks, human cargo vessels were traveling unescorted through sectors that had been pirate havens for centuries. The galaxy's criminals had learned a simple truth. Americans don't just defend themselves. They hunt down anyone who threatens their people and eliminate them with surgical precision. The age of human dominance had begun. And it was written in the debris of those who thought they could prey on Earth's children. The transformation was nothing short of miraculous and terrifying. 1 year after humanity's violent introduction to galactic politics, the star charts had been redrawn. 12 entire sectors now flew under the protection of the Terran Federation, their trade routes secured by ships that bore the stars and stripes. Across the cosmos, what had begun as a desperate defense of Earth had evolved into something the galaxy had never seen before. The systematic conquest of space by a species that treated warfare like a competitive sport. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood on the bridge of the USS Dominion, humanity's most advanced warship, and watched alien fleets scatter like startled fish before a shark. Her reflection in the armored viewport showed a woman who'd earned her stars. The hard way through combat that had redefined galactic warfare itself. The former Air Force pilot had commanded the defense of Luna Colony during the hegemony's failed invasion, and now she ruled space lanes that had once been the domain of species with a 1,000-year head start on human civilization. "Admiral! We're receiving multiple course corrections from alien traffic control," reported Navigation Officer Lisa Chen, her voice carrying the casual confidence of someone who'd grown accustomed to alien deference. 3 separate merchant fleets are altering their routes to avoid our patrol vector." Sullivan nodded with satisfaction. The galaxy's once dominant species had learned a harsh lesson about the difference between being advanced and being effective. Human ships didn't just travel through space, they owned it. And every alien captain knew that challenging American authority was a fast way to become space debris. "Ma'am, incoming distress signal from the Proxima trade convoy," Commander Steve Parker announced from the communications station. His weathered face, scarred from boarding actions against alien pirates, showed the alertness of a predator who'd learned to hunt in 3 dimensions. "They're under attack by void hunters." The bridge atmosphere shifted instantly. Throughout the ship, Sailors who'd been maintaining routine operations suddenly focused with laser-like intensity. The Void Hunters weren't just another alien threat. They were legends whispered in fear across the galaxy. For 10,000 years, they'd been the apex predators of known space, being so terrifying that entire civilizations had structured their societies around avoiding them. Sullivan's eyes gleamed with something that would have chilled the souls of those ancient civilizations. Set course for intercept. Full combat speed. But here's what made Admiral Sullivan different from every other military commander in galactic history. She didn't just fight battles. She studied her enemies with the analytical precision of a scientist and the ruthless efficiency of a chess grandmaster. But Admiral Parker hesitated, his years of experience making him cautious. Our intelligence suggests it's a trap. The Void Hunters are using the convoy as bait. They want to draw us into an engagement on their terms. Sullivan's smile was pure predator, the expression of someone who'd turned trap-making into an art form. I know. That's what makes it interesting. Commander paused, processing the implications. In the old galaxy, military leaders avoided traps. In the new galaxy, the one dominated by humans, military leaders walked into traps and turned them inside out. It was a fundamental shift in strategic thinking that had revolutionized space warfare. All hands, battle stations, Sullivan announced over the ship-wide communication system. We have Void Hunters who think they're clever enough to trap Americans. Time to show them the difference between being smart and being American. The USS Dominion transformed from a ship into a weapons system as her crew prepared for combat. In the weapons bays, munitions specialists loaded projectiles that had been designed specifically to counter Void Hunter technology. In the engineering sections, technicians pushed reactors to output levels that alien engineers had declared impossible. The ship itself became an expression of human ingenuity applied to the ancient art of warfare. Dropping out of hyperspace in 3.2.1. The Dominion materialized in the Proxima system like an avenging angel, her hull gleaming with the distinctive, ablative armor that had become humanity's trademark. The Void Hunter Fleet 7 ships that had terrorized this sector for centuries suddenly found themselves facing something they'd never encountered, a species that hunted hunters. Admiral, reported Tactical Officer Rodriguez. I'm reading displacement signatures consistent with Void Hunter cloaking technology. They're trying to surround us. Sullivan studied the tactical display with the calm assessment of someone who'd fought these battles before. The Void Hunters were following their standard tactical doctrine, use superior stealth technology to achieve positional advantage. Strike with overwhelming force. It was a strategy that had worked for millennia against species that thought defensively. Interesting, she mused. They're still thinking like predators. They haven't realized they're now the prey. What happened next would become required study at every military academy in the galaxy. The Dominion didn't try to avoid the Void Hunter. She activated her own cloaking systems and disappeared, leaving the aliens to close their formation around empty space. Then, using gravitational sensors that humans had developed specifically for hunting cloaked vessels, she began picking off Void Hunter ships one by one. First target destroyed, Rodriguez reported with professional satisfaction. They never saw it coming. The engagement lasted exactly 47 minutes. When it ended, the Void Hunter fleet had been reduced to expanding clouds of superheated plasma, their legendary reputation shattered by a species that had learned to fight in the depths of space with the same ruthless efficiency they'd once applied to terrestrial warfare. All Void Hunter vessels destroyed, Parker reported, his voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who'd just witnessed history being made. The Proxima convoy is safe. But the real victory wasn't the destruction of the Void Hunter fleet, it was the message it sent echoing across the galaxy. The species that had terrorized civilizations for 10,000 years had been eliminated. By humans in less than an hour? The galaxy's food chain had been permanently reversed. Admiral, we're receiving transmissions from across the sector, reported the communications officer. Alien governments are requesting protection agreements. They want to formalize their submission to Terran authority. Sullivan looked out at the debris field that had once been the galaxy's most feared predators. Tell them we'll consider their applications, But make it clear, we don't just offer protection. We offer dominance. The transformation was complete. Americans hadn't just entered galactic civilization, they'd conquered it. The species that had once been dismissed as primitive gatherers now ruled star systems with the casual confidence of born leaders. The galaxy had learned that there was a difference between being advanced and being American. And this was just the beginning. The sight would have been unthinkable. Just 2 years earlier, the galaxy's oldest and most powerful civilizations gathering. In a space station that orbited Earth like a conquered moon, the Galactic Council Chamber, once the proud seat of 10,000-year-old empires, now floated in geosynchronous orbit above Washington, D.C. The symbolism wasn't subtle, and it wasn't meant to be. The species that had once dismissed humans as primitive gatherers now came to Earth to beg for protection from the very predators they'd awakened. Ambassador. Rachel Peterson stood at the podium with the casual confidence of someone who represented the galaxy's newest and most terrifying superpower. The former Secretary of State had negotiated trade deals worth trillions. But nothing had prepared her for dictating terms to beings who'd been exploring the cosmos when humans were still discovering fire. Her silver hair was pulled back in a regulation bun. But her steel blue eyes held the authority of someone who spoke for a species that had fundamentally altered the balance of galactic power. Gentlemen, ladies, and ways. Whatever you are, she began, gesturing to the bizarre assembly of alien forms that filled the chamber. The Terran Federation has a proposal that I think you'll find very reasonable. The chamber fell silent, except for the nervous chittering of the insectoid delegation and the low harmonic hum of the crystalline collective. 2 years ago, these beings had been preparing to enslave humanity. Today, they sat in chairs designed by human engineers, breathing air recycled by human technology, under the protection of human weapons that could vaporize their fleets without warning. Elder Thane's crystalline form pulsed with the nervous energy of someone who'd watched his entire civilization's military doctrine become obsolete overnight. What do you want from us, Ambassador Peterson? Peterson's smile was warm, friendly, and absolutely terrifying in its implications. Simple. We want what Americans have always wanted, to be the best at everything. You need protection from pirates, raiders, and what's left of the Void Hunters. We need ... challenges. But here's what made this moment truly historic. The aliens weren't just surrendering their independence. They were begging for the privilege of serving under human command. The assembled representatives exchanged glances that spoke volumes about how thoroughly their world had changed. Human challenges had become legendary throughout the galaxy. When Americans got bored, entire star systems tended to experience what the diplomatic corps euphemistically called rapid political restructuring. Will provide security for your trade routes, protect your colonies, and solve your conflicts. Peterson continued, her voice carrying the casual authority of someone discussing weekend plans rather than the fate of galactic civilization. In return, we want full access to galactic technology, resources, and recruitment opportunities. Word recruitment sent a chill through the chamber. The aliens had learned that when humans talked about recruitment, they meant something far more comprehensive than traditional military service. They meant transformation. General Marcus Williams stepped forward, his decorated uniform bearing campaign ribbons from conflicts across a dozen star systems. The former Marine had earned his stars by turning alien military doctrine on its head, and now he represented humanity's most ambitious project yet, the systematic conversion of alien species into human-style warriors. Some of your species show remarkable potential under proper training, Williams announced, his voice carrying the enthusiasm of a coach who'd discovered untapped talent. The Corvanthy make excellent pilots once they learn to think aggressively instead of defensively. The Zephyrians are natural tacticians when they stop overthinking and start reacting. You can teach them to hunt. The implications hit the council like a physical blow. Humans weren't just offering protection, they were offering to turn peaceful species into predators. It was cultural imperialism on a scale that had never been attempted in galactic history. You want to ... change us? Whispered the ethereal delegate, her translucent form shimmering with fear. William's grin was pure American confidence. We want to make you better, stronger, more competitive. We want to teach you what it means to win. The council realized the horrifying truth. Humans weren't just apex predators. They were apex predators who created other apex predators. They didn't just conquer civilizations. They transformed them into versions of themselves. It was assimilation on a psychological level that turned conquered species into enthusiastic participants in their own cultural extinction. Consider the benefits, Peterson continued, her tone shifting to the persuasive cadence of someone closing a deal. The Andromedon Trade Union has already signed up. Their cargo fleets now travel with human-trained escorts, and piracy in their sector has dropped to zero. The Centauri Republic's military academies are using human tactical doctrine, and they've won 3 territorial disputes in the past 6 months. What? T'other species were already signing up voluntarily? The chamber erupted in multilingual chatter, as delegates realized they weren't just being conquered, they were being left behind by civilizations that had already embraced human leadership. The choice is simple, Peterson announced, her voice cutting through the chaos. You can join the Terran Federation as allies and partners, with all the benefits that entails. Or you can try to go it alone in a galaxy where humans set the rules. Threat was implicit, but unmistakable. Species that refused to join the human-dominated order would find themselves isolated, unprotected, and eventually absorbed by neighbors who'd already embraced American military training. Elder Thane's crystalline form flickered with the resignation of someone who'd watched his species' independence evaporate. What are your terms? Peterson's smile widened. Full technology sharing, joint military commands, cultural exchange programs, and most importantly, your best and brightest get to attend American military academies. We'll teach them to think like Americans, fight like Americans, and win like Americans. The session concluded with the signing of documents that would reshape galactic civilization. One by one, the ancient powers of the galaxy formally submitted to human authority, trading their independence for the promise of survival in a universe that had suddenly become far more competitive as the delegates filed out. Peterson's final words echoed through the chamber with the weight of historical inevitability. Welcome to humanity's galaxy. We promise you'll find it, competitive. Age of American dominance had begun. The galaxy's greatest civilizations now served as hunting companions to Earth's ultimate predators, and they were learning to like it. The transformation was complete. In less than 2 years, humans had gone from unknown species to galactic overlords, turning ancient civilizations into eager students of American military doctrine. The galaxy had learned that there was a difference between being advanced and being American. Always one. This systematic transformation of entire galactic civilizations in under 2 years, that's compound growth in action. When strategic thinking meets relentless execution, small advantages multiply into overwhelming dominance. Want to discover how this same principle of exponential growth can revolutionize your personal success? Check out our next video where we break down the mathematics of compounding and show you how to harness it for your own life transformation.